The rain came in soft and steady, a September curtain against the wide kitchen window of David Miller's suburban Ohio home. At 70, David moved slower than in his firefighter days, but his mind stayed sharp as the hiss of drizzle on leaves. The smell of oak logs from the backyard mingled with the faint aroma of garlic from the bread he had warming in the oven. Saturday evenings like this, no alarms, no sirens, were his reward for a lifetime of running toward trouble. The plan was simple. Family dinner, maybe a little TV after. Around 5 o'clock his phone buzzed. "Jenna. Dad, we're thinking pizza tonight. Ask the kids what toppings they want." David smiled at the message. His daughter Jenna had always been the planner, the kind to pre-order napkins for a picnic. He glanced at the 2 grandkids sprawled on the living room rug. 8-year-old Eli was constructing a Lego fire truck. His sister Grace pretending to be its brave chief. "Pizza, huh?" David said, stepping into the room. "Pepperoni or veggie?" "Pepperoni. Extra cheese." They chorused like a tiny fire brigade answering a call. "Done," David laughed. "You two are consistent." In the background the clock ticked, a small heartbeat in the quiet house. A knock on the door broke the cozy rhythm. Mark, David's ex-son-in-law, poked his head in. Divorced from Jenna for 3 years, he remained a regular presence. Too regular, some would say. Mark carried a phone like it was part of his hand, thumb swiping with mechanical urgency. "Evening, Chief," Mark said, using the old nickname like it was still fresh. "Heard we're doing pizza. I know a new place, killer crust. Mind if I order?" David raised an eyebrow. Mark never volunteered for dinner duty. "Sure, as long as the kids approve." Before David could turn, Noah and Lily, Jenna's children, entered quietly. They exchanged quick glances, that silent kid language adults always underestimate. "Grandpa," Noah said, tugging his sleeve, "can we order from Mom's friend's place instead? It's called Cedar Oven. They have, better cheese." The request sounded harmless, even thoughtful. But David caught the way Lily bit her lip and how Mark's eyes flicked to his phone, screen glowing like a small secret. Something about the timing felt staged. Dinner decisions should be the lightest of family moments, but for a man who'd spent 30 years reading smoke signals, the subtle cues were as clear as a flare. David crouched to Noah's eye level. "Better cheese, huh? That important?" he teased, but the boy only shrugged and looked at his sister. Grace whispered to Eli, "Why are they acting weird?" David straightened, the faint alarm in his gut growing louder. Mark jumped in. "Their mom's friend just opened the place. We should support local, right?" "Always," David said slowly. "Text Jenna and see what she thinks." "I already did," Mark replied too quickly. "She's on board." David studied him. Mark's smile was tight, practiced. He could almost hear the creak of hidden gears turning. While the kids debated toppings, David set plates on the table and let his thoughts wander. Since Margaret, his late wife, passed, he had doubled down on rituals. Handwritten dinner logs, Sunday hikes, even the silly rule that no phone could touch the table. Tonight those small traditions suddenly felt fragile, like thin ice over deep water. His phone buzzed again. Expecting Jenna, he slid it open and froze. A message from Jenna indeed, but with a strange preface. Forwarded accidentally. Inside, a single sentence pulsed on the screen. "Money wired once he agrees. Make sure Dad never finds out." David's breath stalled. "Money wired. Agree to what? And make sure Dad never finds out." Years of emergency training steadied him. Breathe. Observe. Plan. He glanced at Mark, still texting with nervous energy. The kids had wandered into the den. Quietly, David tapped for details on the message header. The originating number wasn't Jenna's. It belonged to a developer he once clashed with over a zoning project, an ambitious man who wanted to buy parts of David's wooded backyard for a family dining complex. The rain outside quickened, drumming like a warning. Could Jenna, his meticulous straight-arrow daughter, be mixed up in this? Maybe it was a mix-up. Maybe. But the firefighter in him knew coincidence was rarely innocent. The oven dinged, snapping him back. He pulled the warm bread out, the scent of butter and herbs wrapping around him like a memory of Margaret's kitchen. For a heartbeat, he almost convinced himself nothing was wrong. Then Mark's phone vibrated with a sharp, secretive buzz. Mark checked it, smirked faintly, and typed back with a speed that spoke of practice. David's old instinct screamed, "Something is burning, even if you can't see the flames." He excused himself casually. "Gonna check the rain gutters before the storm gets worse." In the hallway he paused, half hidden by the coat closet door. From there he could hear Mark's voice, low and urgent. "Yeah, he's buying it," Mark whispered. "No clue. We're golden." The words landed like sparks on dry timber. David's grip tightened on the doorframe. Buying it? What? And who was we? He pictured the forested half-acre behind the house, his sanctuary and Margaret's favorite painting subject. He recalled the developer's old offer, a chain restaurant and parking lot. He'd refused without a thought. Could Jenna and Mark be planning a second secret try? By the time David returned to the kitchen, his plan was forming. Years of fighting fires taught him that panic only feeds the flames. He set the bread on the counter, wiped his hands, and forced a grandfatherly smile. "So, cedar oven it is?" he asked. "Yeah," Mark said, cheerful but with eyes that didn't match. "They'll deliver in about 40 minutes. "Great. Gives us time for a game," David said. "Phones in the basket like always." It was a family rule, one everyone respected. Reluctantly, Mark dropped his phone beside the kids. David placed the basket on a high shelf, the quiet click of the cabinet door feeling like a small but critical victory. Inside, his mind raced. What exactly are they hiding? And how far are they willing to go tonight? Outside, the rain deepened into a steady downpour, the perfect soundtrack for the tension settling over the room. Grace sensed it, climbing into David's lap. "Grandpa, is something wrong?" she asked softly. He hugged her close. "No, sweetheart," he said in a calm voice he barely owned. "Grandpa just has a lot on his mind." Inside, though, every instinct blared like a fire alarm. This wasn't just dinner anymore. This was the first spark of something bigger, a test of loyalty, trust, and the very ground beneath his home. The takeout spark had been lit. What it would burn or save was only beginning to unfold. Rain slid down the kitchen windows like a dark curtain as the Miller household settled into that uneasy lull before dinner. The bread David had baked now cooled on a wooden board, releasing quiet puffs of steam. The air smelled rich and homey, but his stomach was tight as a fire hose under pressure. Mark leaned against the counter, casual on the surface. "Delivery guy said 30 minutes, he announced, checking the clock with a little too much precision. David nodded, hiding his thoughts. 30 minutes to figure out what's really cooking. He poured cocoa for the kids, a perfect cover to slip his own phone from his pocket. With a practiced flick of his thumb, he forwarded the mysterious text to a secure folder and screenshot the number. Then he tucked the phone away and joined the living room as if nothing weighed on him. 15 minutes crawled by. The sound of rain blended with the clack of Lego bricks. Then Mark's smartwatch vibrated. He stepped toward the hallway and, thinking no one noticed, answered with a hushed, "Yeah." David followed quietly. Years of emergency work had taught him to walk like a shadow when he needed to. From the dim corner by the coat closet, he caught pieces of the conversation. "Tonight's the window," he signs. "We're funded Monday. Don't worry, the clause is handled." Clause. David's heart thumped. Could Mark mean the special clause in Margaret's will? The one that required every family member's consent for any sale of the property? He strained to hear more. "We'll toast when papers are done. Cedar oven's just the start. He won't see a thing." The call ended with a brisk "perfect. Talk soon." David eased back into the kitchen before Mark returned, his mind whirling. So the cedar oven dinner wasn't about cheese at all. It was bait. They wanted him relaxed and unsuspecting when a document, maybe something disguised as a harmless receipt, came out for signature. To steady himself, David poured a glass of water and thought it through. Jenna's accidental text. Money wired once he agrees. Mark's secretive call about a window and the clause. The sudden obsession with a friend's restaurant. All arrows pointed one way. A covert land sale. But why? Jenna loved the forest nearly as much as Margaret had. He remembered her childhood afternoons spent drawing wildflowers and naming squirrels. Could she really be plotting to sell half the property? David's firefighter instincts whispered motive. He replayed family conversations from the last few months. Jenna worrying about medical costs, talk of college funds, and Mark, forever juggling debts from a failed investment. A lump formed in his throat. Maybe they weren't greedy. Maybe they were desperate. David decided to press, gently. Returning to the living room, he kept his voice casual. "Jenna texted about dessert," he lied smoothly, pretending to glance at his phone. "She mentioned a surprise for tonight. Any hints?" The kids exchanged blank looks. Mark blinked, caught off guard, then forced a grin. "Guess she's full of surprises." David let the silence stretch. The old fire chief's stare, steady and knowing, did its work. Mark shifted his weight, the faint clink of coins in his pocket betraying nerves. Time dragged until the cedar oven delivery finally arrived. An hour late. Mark hurried to the door, tipping the driver with unusual generosity and a quick, whispered thanks. He returned carrying a thick paper bag and, tucked discreetly inside, a slim folder. David caught the flash of glossy cardstock. Not a pizza box, but something official, manila yellow with a legal edge. Mark set the food on the counter, keeping the folder half hidden. "All right, folks. Who's hungry?" The kids cheered, distracted by the smell of warm crust. But David's eyes stayed on that folder the way a firefighter watches the flicker of a backdraft. Before anyone could sit, David clapped his hands. "Family tradition first," he said with bright warmth. "Everyone signs the dinner log, date, time, favorite part of the day. Your grandma started this, remember?" The children scrambled for pens, delighted. Mark hesitated, then shrugged and signed, perhaps thinking nothing of it. David placed the log on a sideboard near the cabinet where the phones were locked away. In reality, this small ritual created a paper trail, proof of who was present and when. He knew from years of fire scene investigations how valuable that could become. Plates filled, conversation loosened. Mark poured root beer and began a light-hearted story. But under the chatter David sensed a second rhythm, like an engine idling. He watched as Mark finally slid the folder closer, almost casually. "Dad," Mark said with exaggerated casualness, "while we're all together, Jenna asked me to pass this along. Some routine maintenance paperwork about the backyard. Just needs a quick signature. You know, insurance stuff. There it was. The hidden agenda wrapped in pizza and small talk. David met Mark's eyes, calm as a still lake. Maintenance paperwork. At dinner. He smiled faintly. Why don't we enjoy the meal first? Paperwork after. Mark hesitated, then forced a grin. Sure. After. David said nothing more. But in that silence he built his counter-strategy, brick by brick. As dishes emptied and the rain softened, Grace tugged David's sleeve. In a whisper she said, "Grandpa, Uncle Mark whispered to Mom on the phone before we came. He said you wouldn't know a thing." "What does that mean?" A mix of gratitude and sadness swept over him. The children had noticed more than the adults guessed. He squeezed Grace's hand gently. "It means," he said softly, "that Grandpa needs to pay extra attention tonight." Grace nodded solemnly, sensing the weight of his words. When Mark finally excused himself to get more napkins, David used the moment to check the manila folder. He carefully lifted the flap just enough to glimpse bold lettering. Letter of intent to sell property. Miller Lot B. No doubt remained. The so-called insurance form was a contract to begin the sale of the very forest Margaret had loved. David replaced the folder exactly as he found it, every motion deliberate. His years on the fire line had taught him that sometimes the best rescue wasn't a dramatic charge. It was a quiet, methodical containment. He now had 3 goals clear as a fire plan. 1. Stop any signature tonight. 2. Secure legal proof of his objection. 3. Find out why Jenna risked their trust. Foreshadowing the showdown. By the time dessert plates were cleared, David's path was set. He would not confront them in anger. Fire chiefs know. Anger is like gasoline on embers. Instead he'd prepare airtight evidence, the kind that could stand in any county office. But first he needed to know how deep this scheme ran. While Mark helped the kids with a board game, David slipped to his study, called a trusted county clerk friend, and confirmed the worst. A developer named Rex Dalton had filed a preliminary interest in Miller Lot B just yesterday. And yes, a signed letter of intent could fast-track the sale. "Thanks, Ed," David said, voice level. "Keep an eye out. Nothing gets recorded without my signature. Not one thing." He ended the call with steady resolve. Tonight, the hidden agenda had been dragged into the light. What began as a rainy family dinner was now a silent legal battle. The night closed with dishes stacked and children yawning, unaware of the storm beneath their roof. Mark left with the suspicious folder still in his bag, thinking he'd simply delayed the signing until morning. But David knew better. He had faced flashovers and collapsing roofs. He understood how to smother a fire before it erupted. He looked out at the dark silhouette of his forest and felt a fierce, calm certainty. No deal will ever touch this land. Not on my watch. Not tonight. Not ever. The stage was set for his next move. A move so carefully planned and quietly brilliant it would seal the property's future and teach every member of his family a lifelong lesson. The rain stopped sometime after midnight, but the air around David Miller's house still carried the tension of an unsolved fire. He had barely slept. Instead, he sat in his study with an old brass lamp glowing over a spread of papers. The deed to Miller Lot B, a faded but binding copy of Margaret's will, and the family dinner log everyone had signed earlier that evening. Every page felt like a promise he had made to his late wife and to the forest she loved. By dawn he had his plan. "Contain the fire before it spreads," he whispered to himself, the mantra of a lifetime on the fire line. "And document every move." Sunday breakfast unfolded with deceptive calm. Mark brewed coffee, trying for casual cheer, while the grandkids played with leftover pizza crusts. Jenna arrived late, raincoat dripping, her face tight with something more than weather. David welcomed her with a warm hug. "Morning, sweetheart. Everything all right?" She hesitated just long enough for him to notice. "Just tired, Dad. Long night." He smiled gently. "Understandable. But before we start the day, there's some family business I'd like to cover." The kids perked up, thinking business meant a treasure hunt or new game. Mark, however, stiffened ever so slightly. David opened a folder and laid out Margaret's will, a document he and Jenna had both signed years ago. "You remember this clause," he said, tapping a highlighted section. "Any sale of the Miller property requires unanimous consent of all immediate family and 72 hours written notice." Jenna's eyes flickered. Mark's jaw tensed. "I remember," Jenna said softly. "I needed to remind everyone," David continued, "because I never want confusion about our home's future. So last night we all signed our dinner log with date and time." He lifted the log for all to see. "That means legally everyone present heard my statement. I will not approve any sale of Miller Lot B." Mark tried to laugh it off. "Come on, Dad, no one's selling anything. We were just—" David raised a calm hand. "Let's not finish that sentence. I've already emailed copies of the log and the will to the county clerk. The record exists. Nothing can be filed without my consent." The room fell silent except for the ticking clock. David then pulled out a new sheet. His own family preservation agreement, typed before sunrise. "This is a simple affirmation," he said, voice even. "It states that no member of this household will engage in property negotiations without full disclosure. If everyone signs, we can eat pancakes in peace." He slid a pen across the table. Eli and Grace, excited to keep the family together, signed eagerly. Noah and Lily followed suit. Jenna picked up the pen, her hands trembling. Mark barely touched his coffee. "Dad, what is this really about?" Jenna finally asked. David met her eyes. "It's about trust. And about a developer named Rex Dalton who filed an interest in our backyard yesterday." Her breath caught. "How do you?" "I was a firefighter for 30 years, he said quietly. "I know how to read smoke." Jenna sank into her chair, tears forming. "Dad, we weren't trying to hurt you. Mark and we thought selling a small strip of land could help with your medical bills and the kids' college funds. Rex promised a community restaurant. We just—" David reached across the table and took her hand. "You were worried about me. I love you for that. But we don't fix fear with secrecy." Mark finally spoke, his voice low. "I pushed for it. The developer guaranteed fast cash. I told Jenna you'd never agree unless it was a done deal." David nodded slowly, letting the silence stretch until the weight of their admission filled the room. Then he said, "Fast cash burns fast. A forest, our forest, lasts for generations." Instead of anger, David offered something unexpected. A plan. "Margaret and I applied for a community grant before she passed. It was approved last month. I was waiting to tell you until everything was official." He unfolded a crisp letter bearing the county seal. "This grant funds a fire safety playground and a community garden right here on our land. Not only will it preserve the property, it provides a small yearly income for maintenance." The children's faces lit up. "A playground. With real slides?" I asked. "And a butterfly garden," David added with a soft smile. "Your grandma would have loved it." Jenna covered her mouth, tears spilling freely now. Dad, I'm so sorry. We should have trusted you. Mark's shoulders slumped. I was wrong. Completely. David slid the preservation agreement back across the table. If we sign this together, it means we start fresh, with transparency and shared responsibility. No more secrets. One by one they signed. Mark last, his signature heavy but sure. David added his own name at the bottom, then carefully sealed the paper in a new fireproof folder. This stays in the safe, he said. Next to Margaret's will. No developer, no quick money pitch can break what we build here today. For the first time all weekend, a genuine peace settled over the room. After brunch, David and the children pulled on boots and walked the perimeter of the forest. The rain had left diamonds of water on every branch. Sunlight broke through, igniting the woods in gold. "Grandpa," Grace said, skipping beside him, "are we the forest's guardians now?" He smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. And the forest will guard you back." Behind them, Mark and Jenna walked hand in hand. Their earlier tension softened into reflection. David let the cool air fill his lungs. This wasn't just a win against a developer. It was a deeper victory. A reminder that patient wisdom could turn betrayal into a stronger family bond. That evening, after the children slept, David sat on the porch with Jenna. Crickets chirped in the gentle dark. "I thought you'd be furious," she admitted. "Anger is easy," he said, eyes on the starlit treetops. "But forgiveness builds a future. Your mom taught me that." Jenna squeezed his hand. "Thank you for saving more than just the forest." David looked toward the woods where fireflies blinked like tiny lanterns. The land was safe, and so was the family's bond, stronger now for having been tested. "A good fire chief," he said softly, "doesn't just put out flames. He teaches others how to keep them from starting." Jenna rested her head on his shoulder, and for the first time in days, the night felt like pure peace. The Monday morning sun broke over Miller Lot B with a clean brightness that felt like a blessing. Mist clung to the forest floor, rising in slow ribbons while dew caught the early light. David Miller stepped onto his porch with a mug of black coffee, breathing in the scent of wet cedar and renewal. He'd barely settled into his rocking chair when a dark SUV rolled up the driveway. The quiet hum of its engine broke the morning calm. Inside, a man in a crisp charcoal suit sat with a leather briefcase on his lap. David recognized him instantly. Rex Dalton, the developer whose name had hovered like smoke over the past weekend. Rex emerged with practiced charm. "Mr. Miller. Sorry to drop in unannounced. I've prepared final documents for your signature. Just a formality. Our crews are ready to begin the restaurant project this week." Behind him, another car pulled up. Jenna and Mark stepped out, their faces tense but resolute. David had called them earlier. "I want everyone present when we meet Rex." Rex glanced at them with a salesman's grin. "Perfect. The whole family. We can wrap this up quickly." David rose slowly, the movement deliberate, like a judge taking the bench. "Let's sit at the porch table," he said, motioning to the wide wooden bench he and Margaret had built long ago. Rex opened his briefcase and produced a sheaf of documents, thick and neatly clipped. "All I need is your signature here," he said, sliding the top page forward. "You'll receive a generous deposit today." Mark's jaw tightened. Jenna kept her eyes on her father. David rested his hand on the papers but didn't sign. Instead, he retrieved a slim folder of his own and laid it carefully on the table. "Rex," he began, voice as steady as a metronome, "before we go further, I want to read something aloud." He opened the folder to a single page and began reading the highlighted section of Margaret's will, the clause requiring unanimous family consent and 72 hours written notice for any land sale. Rex shifted in his seat. This is just boilerplate. Families waive these things all the time. Not this family, David said, his voice firm but calm. He held up a second document, the family dinner log, signed and dated by every member present. Here's proof that as of Saturday night, I explicitly refused any sale. And this morning, the county clerk confirmed receipt of my emailed statement. He let the silence stretch, the air thick with the sound of crickets and distant birdsong. Rex's smile faltered. Jenna stepped forward, her voice quiet but clear. Rex, I was part of the early talks, but I no longer consent. I stand with my dad. Mark followed, swallowing hard. I do too. No sale. Rex's eyes hardened. You're throwing away an enormous opportunity. David leaned closer, his steady firefighter gaze locking on Rex. Opportunities built on deception are never worth taking. For a long moment, only the rustle of the trees answered. Finally, Rex snapped his briefcase shut, his professional polish cracking. Without another word, he strode back to his SUV and drove off, tires crunching the wet gravel. Silence settled on the porch like morning mist. Then Jenna exhaled a shaky breath. Dad, I'm so sorry. I nearly helped destroy what Mom loved most. David placed a hand on her shoulder. You were scared about finances. Fear makes good people stumble. What matters is we faced the truth together. He stood and looked toward the sunlit woods. Now we focus on building something lasting. That afternoon, David invited a few trusted neighbors to a meeting in the barn. He revealed the county grant he and Margaret had applied for, funds earmarked for a fire safety playground and a community garden. Children could learn about forest stewardship. Families could grow vegetables and share harvests. The grant also included a small maintenance stipend, steady income to keep the land protected without burdening future generations. The neighbors were thrilled. Several offered to help with planning and labor. Within weeks, the transformation began. Mark, eager to make amends, volunteered his construction skills. He led the team building a cedarwood playground tower shaped like a firehouse, complete with a bright red slide and kid-friendly fire safety signs. Jenna organized weekend gardening clubs and arranged for native wildflowers to attract butterflies. Her way of bringing Margaret's love of nature back into daily life. The grandchildren planted apple saplings and painted cheerful signs. Miller Forest, homegrown love. David worked alongside them every day. His old fire chief muscles remembering the rhythm of tools and timber. Each swing of the hammer felt like sealing another layer of trust. The community responded with donations of benches, picnic tables, and even a weatherproof storytelling corner. By early summer, what had almost become a strip of asphalt turned into a living playground where laughter and birdsong mingled. On a golden June afternoon, the family hosted a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Children raced through the playground while parents toured the vegetable beds. A plaque near the entrance read, Miller Lot B Community Garden and Fire Safety Grove. Protected by the love and wisdom of David and Margaret Miller. For families today and generations to come. Jenna, eyes glistening, gave a short speech. Dad taught us that protecting family isn't just about defending property. It's about guarding each other's trust. This garden is proof that we can turn mistakes into growth. The crowd erupted in applause. David, holding Grace and Noah by the hands, smiled with quiet pride. That evening, after everyone had gone, David and Jenna walked the trail through the woods. Fireflies blinked like scattered stars. I keep thinking about how close we came to losing this, Jenna said. David squeezed her hand. Every family faces storms. What matters is how we rebuild. Remember, forgiveness doesn't erase the fire. It makes the ground fertile for new roots. Jenna rested her head on his shoulder. Mom would be proud. She is, David said softly, gazing at the canopy of leaves glowing in moonlight. Before heading inside, David addressed his grandchildren, who were still chasing fireflies near the porch. Kids, he called, never forget, wealth isn't just money. It's the land you protect, the family you love, and the neighbors you help. Guard those treasures, and they'll guard you back. The children nodded solemnly, the kind of lesson that etches itself deeper than any bedtime story. As night deepened, David looked over the vibrant garden and the playground that now echoed with community laughter. What had begun as a simple pizza order, a night that nearly shattered trust, had become a living legacy. Family can break your heart and build it stronger in the same breath, he reflected. If this story lit a spark of hope in you, share it. Remind someone you love that patient wisdom and forgiveness can turn any betrayal into new life.